Hey guys, I'm Randy, and today on BRStv we're taking a look at the DIY auto top-off kit from Aquahub. Today we'll go over what it comes with, how to put it together, and show you a few ways that you can keep it working for you over time. For those of you who love do-it-yourself projects that save you money and are pretty handy with working with electricity and wiring, then this ATO is for you. When you're done building this auto top-off kit, you'll have an automated way to keep the tank topped off with fresh water rather than having to do it by hand with buckets. And not only that, but you get the added bonus and the satisfaction that you built the entire thing with your own two hands. The best part about this whole DIY ATO kit is that it comes with everything you need to control the on and off functionality of your choice of ATO pump. That means you can personally set the levels of your high and low points to activate the pump, so you get a more customized fit for your specific tank setup. Since this Aquahub DIY kit comes with everything you need for controlling a pump of your choosing, there's really not much you'll need to accessorize it. That said, you will need to choose a pump that fits your tank. If you have a short distance or height to pump, like having your top-off water go directly into the sump, these Micra and Micra Plus pumps from Seche, the Aqualifter, or mini MJ pumps from Cobalt should do the trick. However, for those of you with higher pumping heights, like up to the rim of your display, may need a stronger pump to keep up, like the popular Cobalt MJ 1200 or Synchrosilent 1.0 or 1.5 from Seche. Lastly, although you can use something simple and cheap like a 5-gallon bucket or empty salt bucket as an ATO reservoir, if you wanted a pre-built one in a variety of colors and sizes, there are acrylic reservoirs available like these from Trigger. The Aquahub DIY ATO kit comes with the things you'll need so you don't have to make multiple trips to the hardware store. It includes 2 float switches that will be used for the high and low water sensors that tell your ATO pump to turn on and off, as well as a mold holder piece of plastic material that you can heat and shape into the brackets for the floats. Along with that, it comes with a small plastic cup that can be drilled and used as a guard to keep the float switch safe from wandering critters or turbulent water in the sump. You'll also see the 12-volt wall transformer with 2 bare wires, a relay and relay socket, as well as a small project box to keep all the electrical components covered and protected. And to make solid electrical connections, Aquahub also includes wire crimp caps. Outside of the included items, you may also need a drill, a pair of pliers, and a small screwdriver, as well as an extension cord that you can dedicate to this ATO project, as you will be splicing into its wires. Before getting into installing this DIY auto top-off, this is a do-it-yourself project which implies a reasonable understanding and ability in electricity, wiring, related safety guidelines, and how to do a project like this. This ATO's electrical components are obviously not waterproof, so be sure to keep it away from any water, as well as use drip loops for every wire. If you have any questions, be sure to contact Aquahub directly. Outside of that, there are a couple pre-install tasks that you may want to get done. The first and most important precaution is that you will be working with 120-volt electricity, which runs the risk of shock or electrocution. It is very important that you do not do any type of wiring with the system plugged in. It's also a good idea to use GFCI outlets or extension cords with built-in fuses to protect you and your home. Basically, we'll be splicing into an extension cord and tying the power wire from that cord into our relay, and then using that relay as a bypass to the ATO pump's power. This relay will send power to the pump when the low-level float switch is making a connection, and will shut the pump off once it begins floating again. Should the low-level float switch fail and the pump continue to run, the high-level float will act as a backup and shut the power to the pump off when it begins to float. Let's get started by building the Aquahub DIY Auto Top-Off Kit. We're going to start this project by constructing the float switch bracket using the included mold holder plastic piece. The first thing I want to do is split the bottom end by cutting the plastic in half about 3 inches up. These will become my brackets that hold the float switches themselves, so I'll also need to drill a hole in each one with a 5/16 inch drill bit. I'll drill the lower float hole about 1/4 inch up and centered, and the upper float hole about 1.5 inches up from the bottom edge and also centered. Now I'll trim the excess from the bottom of the upper float and use a float switch to test for fit. The next few steps will require some hot water in order to soften the plastic and mold it into shape. I like to use a small coffee cup of hot water and work on each end separately, in which case I'll dip the bottom side in first and leave it in there until the plastic becomes easy to bend. One thing to note here, I find it's best to pull the plastic out occasionally and test its flexibility so it doesn't get too soft and hard to work with. Now I can make 90-degree angles on each tab, let them cool, and test for fit with a float switch. If you find that the float doesn't fit properly, simply re-dip in hot water and bend again. If you want a crisp 90-degree angle, you could try using something flat like a ruler to help you bend the plastic straight. Now with the float brackets done, I can dip the top side of the molded holder to soften it up, pull it out and shape it to the custom fit edge of my sump. Then I can mount my float switches and move on to the next step. On a side note, you can also add the optional snail guard at this point by drilling 2 holes in the top and bottom of the cup for air and water to escape, as well as a center hole for the float switch to thread through. It should look like this when you're done. We can now start preparing the wiring by stripping a bit of wire insulation to expose the wires on both the floats as well as the 12-volt wall transformer. Starting with the floats, I'll connect any of the 2 wires together and using the crimping cap to make them a permanent connection. With the leftover wire on the low-level float, I'll make the same connection to one of the wires from the transformer. It really doesn't matter which color of wire you choose here, since the relay will be controlling the power to the pump. With those wire connections finished, I can install the last 2 bare wires to the relay switch on posts number 7 and 8, which you can see are labeled in very small numbers next to them. In case you can't see the numbers, just look for the top 2 posts near the side that only has 2 plugs for the relay itself. To make the most solid connections, it may be a good idea to remove the screw and plate completely, bend the wire end around the screw, and then screw the plate down onto it. The next steps require you to splice into the power wire or hot wire of an extension cord, so be absolutely sure it's not plugged in beforehand. You can identify the hot wire a couple different ways. One style of cord will have ribbing on the neutral side, while the hot side will be smooth. Or you may find 3 colors inside your extension cord, with the black wire being hot, white being neutral, and green being ground. Once you have the hot wire identified, you can cut it and strip back about a ½ inch from each end and secure them into posts 4 and 6 on either end of the relay socket. The ATO is finally starting to take shape, and now that the wires are installed, you can plug in the relay, cut a notch in the side of the project box for the wires to travel through, and screw on the box's lid. A couple things to note here. To keep all the wires together and manageable, it may be a good idea to zip tie them together and install the lid. Also, the project box is not waterproof, so be sure to mount it up and away from any water splashes and in a place where it will not fall into the water, as well as using drip loops on every wire. Now that you have your DIY ATO project complete, let's talk about setting it up and using it. Before you plug anything in, be sure that all of your electrical cords have drip loops and all bare wires have been covered and placed inside the protective project box. With that done, you can plug your ATO pump into the extension cord and run the output tubing to your sump or top of the tank. Next, you should dry test the float switches out of the water to make sure that they're turning your pump on and off properly. With the low-level float switch pushed down, your pump should power on, and lifting it should turn the pump off. To test the high-level switch, just allow the lower switch to power on the pump and lift the high-level switch to turn it off. With that done, mount the float switch bracket onto your sump and be sure that it's away from any other electrical equipment like return pumps or power heads, which may cause magnetic interference. Also, since this ATO does not have any sort of built-in delay timer, be sure to put them in a location with very minimal waves or turbulence. This will help stop the pump from constantly toggling on and off, which may help to extend its life. As with most of the gear we use for reefing, a bit of maintenance can go a long way to keep it functioning properly for you. Like other gear with float switches, keeping the switches clean and free from salt creep, algae buildup, and debris will make sure that they function properly over time. Since float switches have moving parts, things like a wandering snail or salt creep can cause them to stop moving, which may cause the pump to stick on or off, and may also be detrimental to your tank or even your home. With that in mind, it may be best practice to choose an ATO reservoir size that can't overfill your sump should the pump get stuck on. Beyond that, checking your electrical connections for corrosion, as well as periodically testing the floats to ensure they're functioning properly, will have you on top of any issues if they should ever arise. As a reminder, this is do-it-yourself, which is much less expensive than other retail solutions and requires you to have working knowledge of electrical wiring. Thanks for watching, and if you have any more questions that we didn't answer here, feel free to give us a call, send us an email, or hop on a chat. See you next time on BRStv.